इस मौजू पे तफसीली गुफ्तगू प्रोफेसर दास साहब करेंगे। मैं सिर्फ ज़रा सा डायरेक्टर होने के नाते 5 मिनट मैं आप लोगों से मुखातिब हूँ इस मौजू पे, और वो ये कि आप सभी लोगों को पता है कि महात्मा गांधी जी की शख्सियत कैसी थी और उनके कारनामे क्या-क्या हैं। उनके तमाम कारनामों पे अगर बातचीत की जाए तो वो एक मुख्तसर प्रोग्राम में मुमकिन नहीं है। उनके ऊपर हज़ारों किताबें और हज़ारों मज़ामीन आर्टिकल्स लिखे जा चुके हैं। इनके ऊपर जितना भी कहा जाए वो ये कम है। लेकिन जो चीज़ उनकी सबसे अहम है वो है अहिंसा और अदम तशद्दुद, जो आप सभी वाकिफ़ हैं। और आज दुनिया के अंदर हम देखते हैं कि चारों तरफ, चाहे वो हिंदुस्तान हो या हिंदुस्तान से बाहर कोई भी मुल्क, चारों तरफ दहशत गर्दी का माहौल है, टेररिज्म का माहौल है। हर जगह हर मुल्क एक दूसरे मुल्क का दुश्मन है। हर रियासत रियासत एक दूसरे रियासत का दुश्मन है, और पड़ोसी अपने पड़ोसी का दुश्मन है। ऐसा एक माहौल पूरे दुनिया के अंदर क्रिएट हो गया है, फ़िज़ा तैयार कर दिया गया है। और अगर देखा जाए तो अदम तशद्दुद, जो गांधी जी का ये नारा था और उनका नज़रिया था अहिंसा, तो ये आज भी रिलेवेंस है। और आज भी अगर हम इनके नज़रिए को अपनाते हैं, उसको इख्तियार करते हैं और पूरे दुनिया के लोग इसके ऊपर अमल करें, तो मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि जो जो पूरी दुनिया के अंदर तशद्दुद है, इंतशार है, उसमें कमी कुछ ना कुछ ज़रूर आएगी। और वक्त की ज़रूरत है कि इस मौजू के ऊपर हम लोग सेमिनार करें, बात करें। गांधी जी ने सफाई के ऊपर, स्वच्छता के ऊपर काफ़ी जोर दिया था, और वो ये कहा करते थे कि सफाई आधा ईमान है। और उनके इस नज़रिए को लब्बैक कहते हुए, खैर मकदम करते हुए, हमारे मौजूदा जो ऑनरेबल प्राइम मिनिस्टर हैं श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने, उन्होंने आते ही स्वच्छता अभियान की शुरुआत कर दी थी हिंदुस्तान के अंदर। बल्कि उन्होंने खुद इस स्वच्छता अभियान में अमली तौर पे प्रैक्टिकली अपने आप को आगे ला करके पेश किया और पूरे हिंदुस्तान के अंदर इस अभियान को चलाया। तो ये गांधी जी की करिश्माती नज़रिए का ये वो नज़रिया ही है कि उसको आज भी इसकी ज़रूरत हिंदुस्तान में बल्कि सारी दुनिया में मौजूद है। इसके अलावा महात्मा गांधी जी हमेशा स्वदेशी के पैरवीकार थे। वो चाहते थे कि भारत आत्मनिर्भर हो, और हिंदुस्तान में अब तक आत्मनिर्भर के लिए कोई खास कोशिश नहीं की गई। लेकिन मैं कोरोना को थैंक्स कहना चाहता हूँ, कोरोना वबा को, कि गांधी के हमारे वजीर आजम इस कोरोना के वबा में उससे ऐसे मुतासिर हुए कि उन्होंने मेक इन इंडिया या आत्मनिर्भर भारत का नारा दिया, और बहुत सारे स्कीम्स उन्होंने चलाए कि जिससे भारत अब आत्मनिर्भर होने के रास्ते में गामजन है। और चूंकि मेरा ताल्लुक एनसी पीवेल से है, नेशनल काउंसिल फॉर प्रमोशन ऑफ उर्दू लैंग्वेज, तो जब हम लैंग्वेज की अगर बात नहीं करते हैं तो ये भी अच्छी बात नहीं होगी। तो महात्मा गांधी ने, आप सभी लोगों को मालूम है कि महात्मा गांधी जी ने मादरी जबान में तालीम हासिल करने की बात की थी, और इस पे काफ़ी सेमिनार भी हम लोग पहले करा चुके हैं। मैं सिर्फ ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि गांधी जी के इस नज़रिए को आज के मौजूदा दौर में उसकी कितनी अहमियत है, कितनी अफादियत है कि हमारे वजीर आज़म और अभी अभी नई जो तालीमी पॉलिसी नाफिज की जा रही है, इसमें भी ये बात कही गई है कि 5वीं क्लास तक हर शख्स को अपनी मादरी ज़बान में तालीम हासिल करना लाजमी है, और 8वीं दर्जे तक वो ऑप्शनल है। अगर कोई चाहे तो ले सकता है, नहीं चाहे तो नहीं ले सकता है। और मादरी और तमाम ज़बानों के फ़रोग के लिए, उसके डेवलपमेंट के लिए वो तमाम रियासतों में एकेडमीज भी कायम करने की बातचीत कही गई है न्यू एजुकेशन पॉलिसी में। तो बहरहाल मैं ये इस नतीजे पे पहुंचा हूँ। कहने के लिए तो बहुत कुछ है, लेकिन मैं तो सिर्फ आज हम लोग सुनेंगे प्रोफेसर दास साहब को, लेकिन मैं सिर्फ ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि महात्मा गांधी के जो नजरिए थे और जो कुछ उन्होंने कहा था और जो उनकी फिलॉसफी थी वो आज भी रेलिवेंट है, और उनके रेलिवेंट होने का सबूत हमारे जो मौजूदा हुकूमत भी दे रही है। और पूरी दुनिया में जो माहौल है, जो फिजा कायम हो गई है, उस फिजा को मद्देनजर रखते हुए हम इस नतीजे पे पहुंचते हैं कि अहिंसा आज भी इतनी ही इम्पोर्टेंट है जितना उनके ज़माने में था। इन्हीं अल्फाज के साथ मैं आप तमाम लोगों का मैं खैर मकदम करता हूँ, शुक्रिया भी अदा करता हूँ। प्रोफेसर विश्वजीत दास साहब बेहद मशहूर व मारूफ और स्कॉलर हैं और जामिया में बहुत बिजी रहते हैं। आज भी उनकी क्लास थी, तो अब मैं उनसे रिक्वेस्ट करता हूँ प्रोफेसर विश्वजीत दास साहब से कि आप प्लीज अपना लेक्चर दें।
थैंक यू। मुझे सुन सकते हैं ना? कोई दिक्कत तो नहीं है? अच्छा, मैं दरअसल आपके लेक्चर सुनने के बाद आई वाज, बिकॉज 33-34 साल हो गए जामिया में, लेकिन उर्दू जो है सिर्फ अप्रिशिएट कर पाया, सीख नहीं पाया। शायद रिटायरमेंट के पास आप ही के पास आऊंगा ताकि बाकायदा उसको सीखना है मुझे। दरअसल कुछ दिन पहले एक मेरे दोस्त मित्र, उनकी लड़की जो है सी वेंट टू जामिया और उर्दू सीखने। तो उसका पर्पस क्या था कि सी वांटेड टू बी एन आर्टिस्ट और सिंगर। तो उसने कहा कि भाई बगैर उर्दू सीखे इस देश में आप कोई भी क्रिएटिव वर्क कर ही नहीं सकते। तो मैं आपको यही कहना चाहता हूँ कि आपके लिए ये एक बड़ा चैलेंज है, कैसे डाइवर्स एरियाज में हम उर्दू प्रमोट कर सकें ताकि ये इट कैन रीच आउट टू अ लार्जर congregations and people instead of just giving language promotions. It can be also included in different activities. मैं थोड़ा मिक्स करके कहूँगा क्योंकि मैं आई एम नॉट फ्रॉम द हिंदी हार्ट बेल्ट, सो इट विल बी वेरी डिफिकल्ट फॉर मी टू आर्टिकुलेट इन हिंदी। कहीं कहीं मैं कोशिश करूँगा हिंदुस्तानी जवान। Janab Professor Sahid Akhtar, Honorable Vice Chairman, National Council for the Promotion of Urdu Language, Dr. Aqil Ahmad, Director, National Council for the Promotion of Urdu Language, my dear esteemed colleagues, friends, professors and students, and ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed an honor and privilege to be associated with your esteemed institution and to deliver a lecture on Gandhi on the eve of 150 years of Mahatma Gandhi. I mean, the journey from Mohandas to Mahatma has a checkered history. Perhaps no leader of modern India has been misunderstood as much as Gandhi. The irony is that this misunderstanding is shared by Gandhians and Gandhi bashers alike, those who had hated Gandhi as well. I mean, they are both jointly united in creating distortions about Gandhi. I mean, there is, however, a reason for this. Gandhi was not a theoretician. He did not consciously construct a blueprint, either of his theory or an ideal social order. He often said that his life was his message. This implied that Gandhi's ideas and ideals were not codified at one place in the form of a doctrine, but were diffused in the form of his activities. People had to extrapolate his ideas and ideology from an assemblage of his actions. Gandhi was no Marx, and he did not leave behind an explicitly worked out theory, what you call codified in a manifesto. And there is certainly no Gandhian manifesto that we can use today to identify his theory and vision. What Gandhi did leave behind was many decades of political and social activities. Gandhi himself said that anyone wishing to follow him after he was dead and gone should simply look at what Gandhi did and how he did it rather than look for any well codified doctrine. I mean, this has created a lot of confusion in independent India regarding who the real Gandhi was. It has become easy for any person or political party to claim to be a Gandhian and do anything in the name of Gandhi. Much is made of his position on religion and politics, that he defended religion's entry into politics, mixed politics with religion, and corrupted politics by introducing obscurantism in it, is part of the general mist of ideas that surround Gandhi. In reality, Gandhi made a crucial distinction between what he called religion with a capital R, which he understood as a moral code of a social order, and a specific religions with a small r. I mean, that is Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, etc. He called religion the tree and religions as different branches of the same tree. I mean, in 1946, he advised his followers there are many religions, but religion is only one. You should follow that one religion, where he supported politics being based on religion, that is a moral order. He was against denominational religions entering politics. In an interview to Louis Fisher given in 1942, he said, religion is a personal matter which should have no place in politics. In 1947, he again repeated, religion is a personal affair of each individual. It must not be mixed up with politics or national affairs. I mean, with such an important distinction between religion and as a moral order and different religions as sets of belief systems and rituals, Gandhi declared in 1947 that the Indian state was bound to be wholly secular. In 1942, he asserted, most unambiguously, free India will be no Hindu Raj, it will be an Indian Raj based not on the majority of any religious sect or community, but on the representatives of the whole people without distinction of religion. Gandhi, as a communicator, was extremely transparent and straightforward. He spoke through multiple platforms. Gandhi was earnest enough to admit that what I say now is what applies. What I said earlier is not true anymore because I have done some thinking since then. This statement clearly reveals Gandhi as a thinking mind with a deeper purpose behind every act of communication. Gandhi selectively appropriated elements from Hindu mythology in a bid to communicate with a larger public sphere. I mean, besides Gandhi's own act of communication, people organized Gandhi Katha, stories narrated about Gandhi in groups and gatherings that were part real and part derived from his body of work. Gandhi's communication is not only what he said, but also the reception, its interpretation, its reinterpretation, its creative interpretation, and its wrong interpretation. In Gandhian thought, the power of a symbol is not independent of the truth of the message. In fact, revisiting Gandhi is full of possibilities. Gandhi's activities during the freedom movement have been presented as having been primarily concerned with the winning of political freedom for India and against British imperialism. However, the manner in which he did it and the philosophy and the tactics together, taking the literal and the metaphorical as one truth, not two truths, is a matter that is of scholarly interest. When we read Gandhi, we are moved by his text, not just by his iconic texts, such as Hind Swaraj or his autobiography, but by his numerous writings, correspondences, and short letters. Gandhi was metaphorical. He knew how to use the language. Gandhi engaged intensively with the language question throughout his life, not only with respect to English language versus Indian languages, but with respect to what should be the language of a country like India. I mean, language for him was a vehicle of culture, of civilization. Civilization for him was not simply in terms of West and East civilizations, but also a question of modernity. I mean, what Gandhi brings to bear in this very unusual little booklet that is called the Hind Swaraj is to say that the very basis of value which modernity proposes sits on a hollow ground. I mean, in Gandhi's Hind Swaraj, the word Western civilization is used not in an ethnic sense, but to explain the modern West. It is a marker of what happened to Europe in its transformation to modernity, a transformation of a phenomenal and remarkable order. In fact, the success, the reach, and the depth of the transformation are such that not just the small continent called Europe sacked the world in terms of power, but the very modes of thinking, the very modes of formulation, and language itself, the relationship of that language with the spoken language of ordinary life, the claims of the bridge language is not just an arbiter of power and excellence, but about the very possibility of meaningful thought. In the past, it was possible to have classical languages with enormous reach and power, but they never, in any part of the world, could win some exception, displace the natural vigor and resonance of the spoken vernaculars. The fundamental argument of Hind Swaraj is that the locus of value in modernity is shifted out of the human locus into the world of things. And therefore, the modern quest begins as a quest to make man as the measure of things, has become things as the measure of man. Let me repeat what he basically tried to say by saying the modern quest, which begins as a quest to make man as the measure of things, has become things as the measure of man. I mean, it has been reversed. And that is the paradox that Gandhi was addressing. And the word he uses for the way out of this is Swaraj, which is most interesting word, expression and concept. I mean, there are three elements of the word Swaraj. One, Shwa, here refers to the individual, Shwa, it's not Shwa, Shwa. Here refers to the individual self, the little life that is given to all of us, but with a profound sense of completeness. And the Swa of the collective, that is social, political, otia. But this little Swa, in its littleness, rests on the infinity of an interior life that never be without transcending cosmic reference, from whence arise both the sense of loneliness and the quest to transcend and the power to question our own principle, markers of identity, even in the moment of most critical measure. Gandhi was a prolific writer and wrote and spoke always with a context and according to the demands of the situation as he perceived them. He was a great political strategist, and his dialectic is also strategic. He preferred the notion of modern civilization to analyze the harsh facts that colonial people were facing in India. It is important to note that while talking about a civilization, he focused on the negative aspects of modern civilization, and he often made it synonymous with Western civilization. Gandhi had been convinced, while writing Hind Swaraj, that the chief driving force of Western societies is imperialistic, and its principal agenda for the colonized people is to exploit the wealth and other resources from colonial lands for the benefits of the West. I mean, Gandhi's emphasis on the negative features of modern civilization as another concrete context. He was aware of the fact that many Indian expatriates in modern language were in the hypnotic grip of all pervading westernized wisdom that was not good for the welfare of humanity in general and India in particular. I mean, most of the expatriates were patriots in spirit, but this patriotism was limited and constrained due to their wrong political understanding. I mean, expatriate Indians were ideologues of individual heroic action that had the potential of inflicting violence. He found this ironically similar to the violent nature of colonial state apparatus when it came to dealing with a lot of subjugated people. I mean, while explaining the issue of nationalism, Gandhi understood the necessity of ground political work and lauded the thoughtful intervention of early nationalists. I mean, he called Dadabhai Naoroji the father of Indian nationalism. He profoundly expressed in Hind Swaraj that religion is a personal matter. And in fact, there are many religions as human minds in this world. Religion cannot be the basis of nationalism of any kind. I mean, one should not try to mix the cultural notions of communalism or some other identity with nationalism just to undermine its very positive historical value. Gandhi was of the view that Indians should contribute to the overall knowledge of world civilization and the problems faced by the world in a manner that reflected their wisdom. I mean, at various points in time, he reaffirmed his faith in Hind Swaraj. There are three possible reasons behind it. First, Gandhi, during the course of the national movement, did develop an instrumentalist relationship with modern technology. I mean, he used it, but without really becoming a slave of it. He did see the total capacity of modern civilization to capture the minds and hearts of the people. I mean, Gandhi did not want to deprive himself and the movement and the people around him of the advantages of modern technology. And second, Gandhi's political life was actually a series of many failures and disappointments and frustrations. I mean, Chori Chora was one disappointment. Rowlatt Satyagraha was not very successful. Bardoli education was not very successful. The peasants paid a huge price for it. He wanted the Congress to do some spinning. He wanted to make spinning a compulsory part of Congress activities. Finding that there were not many takers, he eventually gave it up in 1922. Therefore, Hind Swaraj provided a kind of a psychological cushion for him in the face of failures and setbacks. I mean, the third reason is related to the nature of modernity itself. Although the economic, political, and social superiority of modernity is not in doubt, it was seen as a morally vacuous. I mean, the sources of morality tend to dry up. I mean, a hectically mobile, egalitarian, instrumentalist society finds it generally hard to generate moral resources. Sorry. In Gandhi's search for morality, Hind Swaraj became a mental signpost. For him, tradition was a huge reservoir of morality. Hind Swaraj served exactly that purpose. Gandhi made a selective appropriation of modern technology in his debate with Nehru in 1945, when Nehru argued that villages were a backward place and a villager is an insular and obscurantist. Gandhi retorted, "The ideal village lives in my mind. I'm allowed to imagine, and my village will consist of intelligent man and woman who would practice hygiene, cleanliness, etc. What Gandhi talked of was not the existential village. Gandhi here is perhaps marking a distinction between historical fact and the immense possibilities that lie hidden. Gandhi's use of symbolic resources is phenomenal. He termed worker struggle as a dharma youth. One may call it a religious struggle, but it was not a religious struggle in that sense, because dharma for Gandhi, again, was a very polysemic word where language was employed in a non traditionalist sense. Gandhi advised workers to remain firm in their commitment to strike. This is actually a textile strike in Ahmedabad. For him, Satyagraha is a struggle where wresting the best wages possible is not the issue. It is important to hold one's honor and dignity. Gandhi told workers not to rely on finances from outside to survive during the course of the strike. They have to work, and work is very important. And few lessons to learn from this experience. Gandhi interpreted the strike as a moral struggle against injustice. He placed it in the context of a broader struggle, not only in India, but the world over, including South Africa, where Gandhi had a first-hand experience of successful Dharam youth. Gandhi wanted the striking workers to act as satyagrahis, who would be prepared to suffer the achievement of justice. There should be no ill will against the mill owners. He told workers to earn their livelihood by working in the period of the strike and not to depend on contributions from sympathizers. This, according to him, amounted to toll and would end up degrading workers in the eyes of the employers, and others. Gandhi sought to maintain a balance between the interests of both the parties so that none would claim victory, which would obviate lasting bitterness between them. His retrospective assessment of the strike was positive because it ultimately resorted to faith among the workers and taught them to remain steadfast in the face of adversity. However, there was a partial failure of communication as the ideas which Gandhi wished to convey to the workers, as well as the mill owners, were not fully carried through. Certain methods of communication employed by Gandhi were quite new. And although these newer channels widened his reach, they also created new forms of misunderstanding. Moreover, these messages, which also created new forms of misunderstanding, these messages which he tried to convey also had certain novelty so far as the conduct of labor strike was concerned. The vivid mythological as well as secular imagery he invoked was not easy to grasp in the mundane and the conflict-ridden world of labor relations. Finally, his conception of the satyagrahis was quite new and idiosyncratic, and in a way it remained so until the end. At least for the majority of the people. So thus, certain communication failure was inbuilt in the polysemic nature of Gandhi's various concepts. It does not mean, however, that it was a total failure. Given the challenge he faced in his political career, Gandhi was constantly looking for better and more effective methods of communication all the time. The open letter and pamphlet were used by the early Congress leaders in their agitations. The pamphlet, for instance, was a very effective means of communication in those days and could really be dated back to the Tom Paine's Rights of Man in the 1790s. The pamphlet worked at several levels, in shorter and was easier to read than a book or even perhaps a newspaper. In addition, it could be easily disseminated as it was cheap. In times of repression, a pamphlet and the very act of its possession itself become a symbol of defiance. This, for instance, is to be found in the case of something called the Green Pamphlet, which Gandhiji brought with him from South Africa in 1896, and which listed the grievances faced by Indians in South Africa. Owing to its green color, it came to be known as the Green Pamphlet. This pamphlet was sold out at his first meeting in India, and thereafter several editions of it were brought out. And the more the government tried to repress, the more popular it became. Similarly, the open letter addressed to the authorities, which would begin by informing people about the latest problems and grievances, served two purposes. Before this, I would like to mention very briefly about the nature of this green pamphlet. Gandhi was invited to South Africa by a very rich, flourishing Muslim businessman in South Africa. And as a lawyer, Gandhi visited South Africa, seeing the plight and the conditions of the workers in South Africa. This is where he brought out this green pamphlet. I think this must be a matter of study in the why the color was green. Probably that will give us an interesting idea to explore further and do more research, intensive research, looking at the various kinds of literature, writings which are already there, are well archived in South Africa about Gandhi's, all these papers before he came to India. I'm sure it will be quite interesting to explore further. So what I was sort of trying to say that, this pamphlet, as I said, that it was sold massively, and it was almost all the issues were sold. So there were two issues which I wanted to highlight. It was actually about that first, it addressed the authorities. Second, it educated people about various issues. Gandhi's Swadesi exhibition in 1923, after the withdrawal of what we call the non-cooperation movement, illustrates the power of spinning and weaving. It also provided a unique platform to people from across the country to complete a flying charkha. The phenomenal success of the Swadesi exhibition in 1923 was visited by almost 1 lakh of people. Thereafter, it became a crowd puller in the following years. One of the scholars, Lisa Trivedi, an American, but settled in the US, but married to an Indian, historian, says that this became a visual means of communication which transcended the language. It also explains centrality of charkha to the concept of Swadesi itself. Gandhi used several such visual symbols to communicate and convey this philosophy. Even the burning of foreign clothes can be seen as yet another visual symbol. The Gandhian Khadi movement responded to the colonial challenge not merely at the level of economics and culture, but also by providing an alternative to the colonial science and knowledge system at each and every level. One of the primary objectives of the Khadi movement was to revive household spinning by challenging the notion of inferiority of Indian cotton production. For this, the Gandhi Khadi movement had to look at the alternative indigenous crops. The response of this Khadi movement was thus not of culture only, but very much a technological one too. Talking about the sense of the scientific method, Gandhi once remarked, "No science has dropped up from the skies in the perfect form. All sciences develop and are built through experience." The spinning wheel was very soon appropriated as a symbol of loyalty and an image to reflect true nationalist spirit by Gandhian leaders. It was a symbol of identification for Congress leaders. Regional leaders often circulated their photographs depicting quite prominently the charkha, Gandhian cap, and Khadi dress. In fact, the Khadi campaign sought to divide Indians into two classes: those who believed in it and wore khadi, and those who did not. However, Gandhi's class division was enforced non-violently, though it was not entirely free of coercion. It provided a mobility of passage from one class to another. His emphasis on non-violence was intended to provide a possibility for the transformation of individuals' political alignment. Wearing khadi in the sense was a transformative experience. One could change one's class affiliation through personal conviction and a change of the heart. Khadi became an ideological symbol on which one's political and personal beliefs could be vindicated. One's clothing became an index of one's political affiliations, a formal recognition of the choice regarding clothes did not arise as an actual outcome of khadi. The dilemma of choosing khadi or other clothes was enforced through a sustained campaign. Khadi's core semiotics lay in it being presented as a commodity of colonial resistance. In refurbishing charkha, there was the use of tradition, but the new reinvented charkha was put in the service as modern carrier of import substitution. Khadi gradually transformed itself into a political fabric. A wearer of khadi became, in the eyes of authority, a rebel. Khadi's transformation from clothing to a political uniform gave the cloth a character. It became a commodity of conscious choice, and the ideological investment in khadi enhanced the character of the cloth. Gandhi was quite conversant with the spirit of trajectories of Western nationalism. Based on violence, Gandhi was very clear that neither violence nor adaptation of Western modernity provides a pathway for India. Gandhi's Hind Swaraj provides an alternative, critiquing the ideology of enlightenment that premises itself on the philosophy of progress through instrumental modernity. The Western instrumental modernity is not free from value. Gandhi demolished the myth of the Western civilization and its various agencies. Gandhi interrogated the word civilization opposed to savagery, and deployed as a mode of self-valorization. Gandhi's critique of modernity is a critique of body politic, which is infected by a disease. This disease, caused by the industrial culture's obsessive celebration of bodily pleasure directly or through its metonymic or metaphoric substitutions. Any nation engendered on the principle of industrialism reposes its faith in progressive ideology, which potentially transforms the artifacts of the past into obsolescence. This historical rupture, devoid of continuity, is unacceptable to Gandhi. And Gandhi opines that religion should be the basis outlining the core principle of nationalism. It should not be based on doctrinaire conception of religion. Gandhi's notion about home rule clearly suggests that freedom should be an essential attribute of nationalism. Gandhi's notion of freedom provides a corrective to the Enlightenment notion predicated on the thesis that freedom is always from something and not towards something. The Enlightenment notion takes an escape route and is thus a retreat from a condition. Gandhi's notion, on the other hand, is based upon a proactive move, a return to the past, to a condition of its subliminal presence. Therefore, Gandhi anchors his nationalism more on strength of inner freedom than on the external need. Gandhi's experiment with truth, in a way, show that truth is not a matter of theoretical speculation, but a livable force that enables one to live a life of peace and harmony in the company of others, despite their different religious persuasions. Religion is one such idea that still persists in our time, despite the skewed epistemological assertion of some scholars that it belongs to a bygone era. Gandhi brings religion back to the center stage of his philosophical thought and accords it a new dimension. Gandhi's concrete understanding of mass consciousness is intricately related with this objective of social change because without it, any attempt to mass empowerment might be derailed. Gandhi in Hind Swaraj and in other writings also treats mass views religion for its entrenched ethical values and practical lessons for living through good conduct. I mean, Gandhi's concept of nationalism is based neither upon religion in the fundamentalist sense nor on secularism in the modernist sense. The kind of secularism which Western modernity promotes views a religious way of life as detrimental to the spirit of the nation. Gandhi is opposed to a sanitized version of secularism bereft of any traces of quintessential religiosity. I mean, Hind Swaraj has to be understood as the argumentative and dialogic side of Gandhi. Gandhi argued on various issues pertaining to societal implications and the necessity for intervention. I mean, Gandhian dialectic, it's simple, but the ideas it imbues are not always so. His ideas are highly contextual, complex, and often subtle. Gandhi was aware of it. For instance, for the language of Hind Swaraj, which was originally written in Gujarati, he acknowledged to its English readers constraints of language to convey the exact meanings and aspirations. I mean, Gandhi himself was a historic product of modern times, and he had acquired his knowledge of contemporary society and its peculiarities within the parameters of modern political consciousness. Gandhi's criticism of modern civilization is synonymous with westernized notions in a colonial context. I mean, all his experiments are part of experience, but not real. But not all experiences may be called experiments. Why Gandhi chose those life events that are to be brought into relief as the outstanding experiences he wished to share with great urgency? I mean, Gandhi in his autobiography addresses matters that are of utmost importance and urgency to him. Even more so than his political work, Gandhi's near dismissal of his political work should not be taken literally. I mean, what he probably means is that the values are at the core of his political thought, and work did not come from politics, and instead originated in the several other spheres of his life. I mean, having stated such kind of an underlying and ever premise and the urgency to communicate, Gandhi goes on to talk about his own bewilderments, confusions, traumas, and even dead ends like closure of intimate relationships with utmost candor. I mean, the great autonomy attributed to the realm of the category of politics in the era of democracy would thus begin to seem baseless in a Gandhian universe. It would seem instead that politics, like many other realms of life, into a what I call a somewhat autonomous sphere. I mean, Gandhi's contribution lay in clearing up the public spaces for a wider and freer public discourse. And he made a start with himself rather than offering to bear others or going barging rebelliously through the countless social walls and laments that the democracy of procedure through its endless series of rules tries to retrain us, and over again in the basic and almost congenital skills instead of creating more opportunities and occasions for free communication. Uh, in Gandhi's autobiography, the earth-shaking matters and the trivials weave together in a much better semblance of daily life than the abstract hierarchies determined by our greatest of democratic institutions. And this is why Gandhi keeps coming back to politics in the shape of an intervention rather than a permanently dwelling ism. I mean, before vanishing again into the thin political skies. I mean, Gandhi once wrote, nothing in the political world uh, is more important than the spinning wheel. I mean, the spinning wheel, that is charkha, for Mahatma Gandhi, what was not just a tool of political emancipation, it was a metaphor of an ancient work ethics and a symbol of economic and social reactions to the British rule. I mean, this ancient work ethics and the goal of the Swaraj, that is the self-rule, in Gandhian framework had to be mediated and through the daily life. I mean, for him, it is the daily life where dharma and practicality come together, and the spinning wheel was the realization of this possibility. So, any understanding of Gandhism needs to bring into focus this metaphor of ancient work ethics, this site of daily life, and the symbol of social and economic reaction. In Gandhian discourse, the spinning wheel signifies decentralization against centralized production system. Gandhi had no exposure to the spinning wheel, nor had any understanding of the difference between the loom and the spinning wheel. However, his deep conviction about the sacred nature of weaving and looms was written prefixed with an ancient and sacred in the Hit Swaraj. I mean, in India, weaving and spinning were much more than simply an indigenous way of producing textile goods. Spinning was very much a part of everyday lives and activities of women of almost all sections of society. Gandhi hardly invented any idea or any symbols. All what he did was a careful selection and reworking of old symbols. And this process transformed the nature of even ordinary everyday objects. I mean, objects and metaphors that were closely related to a wide cross section of Indian people and were a part of what you call day to day life. Uh, I mean, in Gandhi's language, the past remained open, and you can say the Gandhians. I mean, there are so many things. I mean, he saw language, as we already mentioned about. I mean, he saw language as a powerful means of achieving national unity, not the separation of regional languages by Hindi, but the addition of Hindi to the former so as to enable provinces to establish a living contact with one another. The Hindustani he advocated as the national language was neither the Sanskritized Hindi nor the Persianized Urdu, but a happy combination of both. It would also freely admit words, I mean, wherever necessary, from different regional languages, as also assimilate words from foreign languages, provide them can provided they can mix well with easily with our national languages. I mean, Gandhi insisted on the use of the mother tongue, I mean, and not Hindi in education, especially at the primary and secondary stages. For that is the language one is nourished on and sustained by. I mean, as I quote what Gandhi said, I remember, I must cling to my mother tongue as to my mother's milk, said Gandhi. In spite of its shortcomings, it alone can give me the life-giving milk. This is what I mean. Why Gandhi should be brought back to the public consciousness in the new millennium, where consumerism, concomitant violence have become the norm. The causes may be immense, as the collapse of the value system and the material prosperities lead to different sets of anxieties and social tensions in society. Gandhi, as a common man with an uncommon commitment to truth and ahimsa, the two most important values, are that part of a national myth. So this is where I will just conclude. I'll end by making the last statement by quoting Professor Ashish Nandi. I mean, as Ashish Nandi rightly points out in his essay, Gandhi after Gandhi, in fact, he says, I mean, Gandhi after Gandhi, distinguished between four Gandhis, in fact, Nandi says, while the first Gandhi is the Gandhi of the Indian state and Indian nationalism, the second Gandhi is that of the Gandhian who, according to Nandi, does not touch politics. And the third Gandhi is the Gandhi of the ragamuffins, eccentrics, and the unpredictables, and is more hostile to Coca-Cola than to any other drinks, and considers the local versions of Coca-Cola more dangerous than imported ones. Finally, the fourth Gandhi walks the mean streets of the world, threatening the status quo and pompous bullies in every area of life. In some sense, perhaps, all these Gandhis are alive today, each with his own eccentricities. Thank you. Thank you very much. Over to you, Said sir.
आवाज नहीं आ रही है। आवाज नहीं आ रही है अखिल भाई। आवाज नहीं आ रही आपकी। अखिल भाई आवाज नहीं आ रही है आपकी। मैं मोबाइल से जुड़ता हूँ, रुकिए एक मिनट। मेरी आवाज आ रही है आपको?
हाँ,
मेरी आवाज अगर साफ आ रही है तो आप बॉक्स में रेज हैंड कर देना। आ रही है आवाज मेरी? अखिल भाई आवाज आ रही है मेरी? आ रही है? ओके। आज के इस द रिलेवेंस ऑफ गांधी इन कंटेम्परेरी टाइम्स में कीनोट स्पीकर के रूप में प्रेजेंट प्रोफेसर विश्वजीत दास जी, जामिया मिलिया इस्लामिया के प्रोफेसर। सबसे पहले मैं आपका खैर मकदम करता हूं। आज का जो आपका स्पीच था वो गांधी जी के बारे में मैं बचपन से लेकर अब तक जितना भी स्पीच सुना हूं, मुझे आज इनलाइटन होने का मौका मिला और आपने very eloquently you covered all the points and the life of Gandhi in your speech. Coming 2nd October 2020 will be great day for India as the country celebrates 151st birth anniversary of father of nation Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. Not only that, but the world celebrates the auspicious day as International Day for Non-Violence to pay respect and acceptance to the true spirit of non-violence promoted by Gandhi ji throughout his life. Gandhianism starts with the famous line, simple living and high thinking. Simple living and high thinking means this itself is also suggestive of the fact that thoughts of an individual have a great role in shaping his or her life. That's why Gandhianism appears to be simple to everyone, but in real sense, practicing it in day-to-day life is difficult. For instance, remaining truthful, tolerant, non-violent, respecting others in difficult circumstances of life require a great degree of commitment. The 21st century has evolved more as a materialistic and pompous world filled with greed, malice, and hatred, where spiritual and moral values are losing steam. The four basic principles of ahimsa or non-violence, that is respect, understanding, acceptance, and appreciation, have lost their identity, depth, and value in the 21st century. Some of major challenges that appears during the 21st century in India that are all pervasive presence of violence and keeping it within limits beside eliminating terrorism, ensuring equitable distribution of wealth and natural resources, also to halt and reverse the exploitation and insensitivity shown in preserving balance in nature, elimination of poverty and hunger, increase in reliance of rurals and politicians on religious fundamentalist elements and by exploiting religious sentiments, decline of moral, spiritual, and ethical considerations, and the expanding influence of consumerism and materialism. गांधी जी ने जो बातें कही हैं उसमें क्लीनिनेस और स्वच्छता की बात है। गांधी जी मानते थे कि स्वच्छता ही सेवा है, जो कि अभी हमारे प्रेजेंट गवर्नमेंट आदरणीय नरेंद्र मोदी जी के इनिशिएटिव पे स्वच्छ भारत अभियान जो चल रहा है, दैट इज द बिगेस्ट क्लीनिनेस ड्राइव इन इंडिया। तो स्वच्छता को भी सेवा मानने वाले गांधी जी एक सोच है और उस सोच और उस विचारधारा को आगे बढ़ाने की जरूरत है। This cleanliness drive is more than physical cleanliness, as Gandhi ji used to emphasize upon the internal cleanliness of the individual. गांधी जी इसको इंटरनल क्लीननेस ऑफ द इंडिविजुअल के तौर पर उसको देखते थे कि अपने मन को, अपने भाव को कैसे आप क्लीन करके दूसरे के सेवा भाव में, और कैसे सेवा जो स्वच्छता को ही सेवा मानकर आप काम कर सकते हैं, अपने मन के अंदर की को भी आपको साफ करने की जरूरत है। Thus, along the clean roads, toilets for the clean India, we require a corruption-free society with greater level of transparency and accountability too. Second, गांधी जी ट्रस्टीशिप को वैल्यू देते थे। ट्रस्टीशिप इज व्हाट नथिंग इन दिस वर्ल्ड, नीदर अ पर्सन्स ओन टैलेंट बिलोंग्स टू एनी पर्सन, रेदर इट इज असाइन्ड टू हिम बाय गॉड टू हेल्प अदर। God have made individual trustees so that they can help the poor, helpless and less fortunate people. एक सेवा भाव के तहत कैसे हम काम कर सके, गांधी के विचारधारा और सोच में ये थी कि ऊपर वाले ने, भगवान ने, अल्लाह ने हमें बनाया है और हमें एक रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी दी है कि हम दूसरों का हेल्प करें, दूसरों की मदद करें, दूसरों की सेवा करें। इसके लिए हम लोगों को असाइन किया गया और उसमें हम अपने आप को आगे आए। दूसरा, उन्होंने सर्वोदय का कॉन्सेप्ट दिया। सर्वोदय क्या है? इंडिया नीड्स यूनिवर्सल अपलिफ्टमेंट फॉर ऑल विदाउट डिस्क्रिमिनेशन, कंसीडरिंग rampant unemployment and illiteracy. Development should not just include the most vulnerable, but it should start from them. डेवलपमेंट की जो है vulnerability नहीं होनी चाहिए। सर्वोदय कॉन्सेप्ट पे ऑलरेडी एक्सप्लेन इन डिटेल जो प्रोफेसर विश्वजीत ने इसके बारे में हम लोगों को बता दिया। देन सत्याग्रह नॉन वायलेंस का कॉन्सेप्ट गांधी जी ने लाया। सत्याग्रह का जो आज कॉन्सेप्ट है ये सिर्फ हिंदुस्तान ही के लिए नहीं बल्कि पूरे दुनिया के लिए। सत्याग्रह शुड बी टर्न्ड इनटू ए ग्लोबल इंस्ट्रूमेंट ऑफ नॉन वायलेंट डिसेंट अगेंस्ट ऑथोरिटेरिज्म and a pragmatic tool of the powerless against the powerful. Suppression of ethnic minorities in countries like China must be countered through an international non-violent agitation. सत्याग्रह का जो मतलब नॉन वायलेंस का है, उसको आज भी जो है वो पूरे इसको ग्लोबल तौर पर इंस्ट्रूमेंट के तौर पर यूज किया जा रहा है। और एथनिक माइनॉरिटीज के ऊपर में जो चाइना में सप्रेशन हो रहा है, उसको भी हम लोग इसको सत्याग्रह के तौर पर हम लोग इसको नॉन वायलेंस के तौर पर उसको एड्रेस कर सकते हैं। गांधी जी ने फिर क्रिएटिव रिजोल्यूशन ऑफ कॉन्फ्लिक्ट का कॉन्सेप्ट दिया, जो एथनिक कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स एंड कम्युनल कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स इन इंडिया कैन बी अटेंडेड टू यूजिंग गांधीयन कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ पीसफुल नेगोशिएशंस, परसुएशन थ्रू रीजन एंड सेल्फ सफरिंग। सबसे बड़ी बात है कि गांधी थॉट्स के और गांधी सोच जो एक प्रोसेस है, थिंकिंग प्रोसेस है, और आज भी वो जिंदा है। आज इस कंटेम्प्रेरी वर्ल्ड में आज हमें जरूरत है कि कैसे उसको हम आगे बढ़ाएं। गांधी जी ने तालीम और शिक्षा के लिए जो बातें कही वो आज के मायने में बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट है। अकॉर्डिंग टू महात्मा गांधी, एजुकेशन इज द कैरेक्टर बिल्डिंग प्रोसेस फॉर ए पर्सन। एजुकेशन को कैरेक्टर बिल्डिंग के तौर पर गांधी जी ने कहा था, और आज हम लोगों को देखना होगा कि हम लोग उस एजुकेशन को कैसे हम आगे ले जा सकते हैं। इट हेल्प्स इन एनलाइटिंग पीपल एंड शोज देम द राइट पाथ एंड encourages देम टू मेक राइट डिसीजन इन लाइफ। थ्रू एजुकेशन से ही हम गांधी जी के जो सपने हैं, गांधी जी की जो सोच है, उसको हम बढ़ा सकते हैं, उसको इनकलकेट कर सकते हैं और उसको लोगों तक पहुंचा सकते हैं। क्योंकि एजुकेशन ही एक ऐसा टूल है, उस टूल को गांधी जी ने कहा कि कैरेक्टर बिल्डिंग प्रोसेस है एक इंडिविजुअल पर्सन का। एक हाईली जो मोरल और एथिकल और एटिक्वेट्स एंड मैनर्स जो है, वो एजुकेशन से जो आता है कि हम उसको पहचान सकते हैं कि क्या गलत है क्या सही है, ये एजुकेशन से आ सकता है। Today education system is mechanistic, which is based on rote memorization without an emphasis on moral, ethical and spiritual development. Gandhi believed in the concept of learning while working, because to him working during studying helps in stimulating human minds towards creative thinking. आज जो नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी आई है, उसमें जो गांधी जी की थॉट्स है, उसको ये प्रेजेंट गवर्नमेंट हमारी सरकार जो है उसको बढ़ाना चाहती है। और इस नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसीज में उस सभी बातों को रखा गया है जिससे एजुकेशन को जो एक कैरेक्टर बिल्डिंग के तौर पर एक पर्सन का देखा जाए और उसमें उसको इंप्लीमेंट किया जा सके। At last, I would like to conclude by saying that Gandhi ji has become an iconic figure, a symbol of many things for many people. His ideology is relevant because it is positive, constructive and practical. Today, throughout the world, people are shifting to non-violent resistance in order to fight against any kind of evil, be it corruption, social, economic and political injustice. The failure of US strategy of aggression followed by in Afghanistan since 2001 to achieve peace and resumption of peaceful dialogue with Taliban is a clear example of viability of non-violent satyagraha. ये आज के दिनों में भी अमेरिका जैसे देश के लिए भी एक ये है कि आखिर उनको जो अब तालिबान में जो 2001 से जो वायलेंस था उसको नॉन वायलेंस में आकर डायलॉग प्रोसेस से कन्फ्लिक्ट को रिजोल्व किया गया। तो आज की जो सोच है वो गांधी जी की जो सोच को अब एनसीपीएल के वाइस चेयरमैन डायरेक्टर साहब ने हमारे बहुत अच्छी बात ओपनिंग नोट में कही कि कैसे गांधी जी के विचारों को, उनके सोच को कैसे बढ़ा सकते हैं। एनसीपीएल अपने उर्दू को जिस तरह से प्रमोट करती है, उर्दू के माध्यम से उर्दू को एज ए टूल, एज ए मीडियम मानते हुए भी हम गांधी के विचार को ज्यादा से ज्यादा किताबों को शाया करेंगे, प्रिंट करेंगे और लोगों तक पहुंचाने का एनसीपीएल काम करेगा। और मैं इन्हीं सब बातों के साथ में, क्योंकि गांधी जी के बारे में जितना भी बोला जाए वो कम है, आज के रिलेवेंस में जो हम लोगों को गांधी जी के विचारों को ठीक ढंग से लोगों तक पहुंचाने की जरूरत है। हम सब लोग आयद लेते हैं और कि हम लोग इनके बातों को पहुंचाकर इस देश में अमन भाईचारगी का एक माहौल बनाएंगे। और सबसे बड़ी बात है कि शांति के लिए अगर नॉन वायलेंस का पाथ को अगर हम चुनेंगे तो इस देश के लिए नहीं, इस मुल्क के लिए नहीं, बल्कि पूरा दुनिया के लिए एक मिसाल होगा और जो आइडियोलॉजी गांधी जी का उसको हम ठीक ढंग से इंप्लीमेंट कर पाएंगे। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया सभी का। वंस अगेन थैंक यू सो मच प्रोफेसर विश्वजीत दास जी, आपका मैं बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया अदा करता हूँ कि आप आए और अपनी बातों से हम लोगों को इनलाइटन किया। थैंक यू वेरी मच। थैंक यू। जय हिंद, जय भारत।
Thank you.